Hello and welcome to the Goa School, Shubhangi and Imran. I'll introduce the two of you in a second. But just to say that Imran and I have known each other for some years, and Shubhangi, although you're from my hometown, I've never met you. But it has been through my college network that I was able to reach out to you. And I think it's been such a fantastic find, and I hope that we will have much more to do with each other, even beyond this open talk. Now, Imran, as you know, is a dad and a photographer. He's also a mentor at the Goa School, and he's been trained in hospitality. Many years ago, he used to have this beautiful restaurant um, in Delhi, which I used to love to go and eat at. And
Which you
then
are a patron of.
I was a patron of, indeed. I think I was one of your early customers, and I kept coming back.
Yes, 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 yes.
And then, of course, you have had this background in FMCG and things like that. So you're like one of somebody who's just done the whole gamut. And our topic for today is bringing up girls in modern India. And you told me before the talk, Imran, that that you've been bringing up your girls on instinct and that you'd love to participate in such a call. So here we are with Imran. Shubhangi, you are a social justice advocate, and I learned 2 minutes ago that you also train lawyers to do better. But mainly, you work on making the law more accessible and more equitable or more fair to women, to queer people, and those from marginalized communities. So we'll get into all of these in a bit. But welcome, both of you, and I really hope that we can do justice to this talk more or less nothing. I have no kids to bring up, and no big points of view in one way or the other, except that of course I stand firmly in for women. Um, but of course, I also stand equally firmly for men. So before we start, and we will get into this, I wanted to say that we have we have a bit of subterfuge built into the topic, in the sense that bringing up girls in modern India can really be unpacked. What is modern India and why only girls, and I mean, there's many layers to it. So I hope that we'll have some fun doing all of that. I'll start with Shubhangi. Shubhangi, what were your thoughts when we approached you with this topic? What were your initial thoughts? Like, why is such a talk needed?
Um, uh, I don't think I was as curious about why such a talk is needed because I do work on a certain end of this. I don't have a lot of work with children, but I definitely work with adults, and we were all children once. But my first thought was, how am I going to set aside jargon and really put it into conversation? As we have because I do this for work, right? And I think it's been a while that I have had just a regular conversation around this that is not deep in some sort of policy, law, politics kind of setup. So no, and I was very excited to hear that you were all doing something like this because this should be everyday conversation because these are everyday lives. Yeah.
100%. Imran, opening thoughts before we launch in.
Well, I don't know. I'm just going to go with the flow. But when you spoke about this conversation you were proposing to have, and I did not take much time to agree to it because I believe there has to be a conversation about raising girls. And in fact, more than that, I believe there has to be a conversation about raising boys. Uh,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
need to and these have to be this cannot be the same conversation. These are very different conversations. We need to bring these poles together, because my personal experience of how children are brought up, be it girls or boys, is from what I've experienced in my own family and extended family and society at large. I'm not a theorist on it, so I have no research to back whatever I say. but it is very instinctual and it's very experiential. What I'm about to say, and I believe that we place very different standards for raising children. And these standards can also vary from eldest to the youngest, from a boy and a girl, and sometimes, even if sometimes with children identify as one or the other, and which is
Yeah.
quite a traumatic experience for the parents. As much as it's traumatic for the kids, it's also traumatic for the parents because they don't know what to do. Uh, at least there are set rules of how you're supposed to raise a boy and how you're supposed to raise a girl. We may or may not agree with what these rules are, but it's still an easy space to navigate given the social structures that we live in. But for a child who does not identify as either, it is traumatic for
Absolutely. Yeah.
everybody. All right. So my first idea was my idea around this, from the experience of raising two beautiful girls, is to actually to kind of bring these things together, the expectations of being a girl or the expectations of being a boy. uh, they should they should be very similar. I won't say the same, but they should be very similar, because we are different genders, we're different people, but it has to be very similar.
Right.
uh, and every family is different, every society is different, every school is different, the
Yeah.
peers in the class are very different, the teachers are very different. So they all are actually bringing up your children, your TV programs are bringing up your children, and it's a daily battle. And you over a period after a period of time, you need to understand what is the essence that I'm looking at, because I can't be controlling all of these aspects. And you need to first define that essence for yourself. And that's where I thought it was very important for us to have a conversation, because it will help me, and hopefully help others to at least raise these questions and not blindly go by, all right, this is how they are done. It seems like they say it takes a village to raise a child. It takes more than a village, it takes a town to raise a child, and you have no control over the town.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. All right. So thank you for saying all of those things. Let's try and structure this a little bit because there were so many layers there. And maybe we can just start with you, Shubhangi. If you could, just tell us a little bit about this whole gender question. So, like we noticed that you introduce yourself as they slash she. What are these pronouns about? Can you tell us a little, because we tend to say girls or girls and boys, and we don't realize that it's an entire spectrum. So please do let us know about that, because that I think would be quite basic to this conversation.
Yeah, and I'd love to. So it's really, I mean, our pronouns are, uh, and they're really as intrinsic as our name. There's a lot of conversation around what gender is, right? That it's a social construct. It's been, some like these roles, these boxes that are sort of predestined, that we have to then assort ourselves into and fit ourselves into. And the great word that you used, and we always use it, that it is a spectrum, right? No, people cannot really be assorted into neatly set up boxes. And
Yeah.
Yeah, just being able to put out our pronouns helps us, well, I suppose, walk into the world and present ourselves as we would want to be seen. So it lets us take a little bit of maybe control, of how I want to really be perceived. It's very similar to when someone pronounces our name incorrectly. I mean, maybe it's clearly understood that someone who's calling might be calling me Shivangi or Shivangini. Maybe it's understood in the circumstances that they're referring to me, but it still doesn't feel nice, right? Because my name is a part of my identity. And if maybe a more fluid gender is also a part of my identity, and I would like for that to be a little more seen. Then putting my pronouns out and people respecting that is really just being a little more considerate about the spectrum of identities that people bring into the world. I know that there's a lot of discourse about how it's maybe unnecessary. There are larger problems. It's an added effort. but it's really just as much as an effort of calling someone by their name.
We tend to think in binaries. We try to say, okay, this is a girl box, this is a boy box, and then we don't realize there's something in the middle. And then the people who may be there and have no way of explaining that, basically the pronouns gives you a way to do that. It gives you a way to be seen. It gives you a way to get an identity.
Yeah, gives us a way to be seen, but also gives us a way to sort of open a bit of a window in case someone doesn't fully know how to put themselves out there.
Yeah.
I think it can be a good hand forward to say, hey, my name is Shubhangi, my pronouns are they and she. If there are people who might want to, might want to even explore what the spectrum is, it sort of opens the conversation up.
Right. So, like, why would you say they and she, or they or she? I mean, why would you not
All
just
right.
say?
All right. Yeah. So what this means is basically that if someone addresses me as in the pronoun self as either they or she, it's okay with me. Let's say someone might say my name is XYZ, my pronouns are he, him. That means that they would prefer to be addressed as he, him, his,
Hmm.
right? And if someone's pronouns are she, her, then she, her, um, uh, hers,
Yeah.
But if someone's pronouns are they, them, then at all points they would prefer to be. So it's probably indicative of being more gender neutral or being more gender fluid, being gender non-binary, basically not fitting the she or the he boxes. Um, uh, and for someone like me, I'm okay with being addressed as they, they, them, or also she, her. So this is what this mix sort of.
Right. One last question of clarity. Do you prefer to be called, I mean, not you personally, but do people who say they'd like to be in the they box, do they do it out of a sense of solidarity, or it's actually got to do with their own sexuality?
So it's not necessarily to do with sexuality at all, actually. It has got a lot to do with gender. Just a basic, like a 101 would be sex is what is biological. You can probably tell from most times tell from the anatomy. Gender is how we sort of express uh, are either between the spectrum of masculinity and femininity. Um, and then hence comes the neutrality part. Gender is how we dress, how we address ourselves. Yeah, it's primarily that, right? I mean, what?
Yeah, but do you do it out of a sense of solidarity, or does anyone do it? No, does anyone do it out of a sense of solidarity, or is it always got to do with where you believe you sit on the spectrum?
To if someone is able to place themselves on the spectrum, then
Yeah.
it is a great show of solidarity, of course. Say if your pronouns are she, her, and if you were to introduce yourself saying, "Hey, I'm Madhuri, my pronouns are she, her," that's great as well. Where the blueprint and the acceptance exists, not getting offended by being misgendered it doesn't happen, right? But when someone does face a gender dysphoria, when there is a mismatch, right? There's a constant clash in having to assert yourself. Then being misgendered can actually cause a lot of cause a
Hmm.
lot of unease as
Get,
well.
so you feel distressed, or there's an anxiety related to that, right? I'm
Yes, yes,
assuming. Yeah,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
cool. That's lovely. Thank you so much. So we finally banged out like this, just that one word, girls. I mean, like, obviously there's lots and lots under that, right?
Yeah.
So let's bang out the other part of the topic, which is modern India. How modern would you say we are? Let's start there. Imran, let's hear from you.
Well, I don't think we get to decide what is modern and what is not modern. I mean, give me a standard I can hold modernity to. You know, we are already in
Yeah,
postmodern era, historically speaking.
Yeah.
We've
yeah.
gone way ahead of it, and I've always believed that this idea that we are living in an era, and the common understanding of modern is like the best of times, which unfortunately, which quite clearly it is not.
Mm.
And If we were to think that we are living the best of times, where knowledge has come to whatever levels it needs to, we have better understanding, we have better social relations, we understand people, we have more empathy towards all varieties, variations. Uh, well, then I think we are so narcissistic to believe that we are the ones who have found it. You know, you go back to pre-Socratic times, they will also have the similar kind of conversation. So I don't believe in this so-called term modern, but if we have to rather relate to where we stand, I think we have some very important indicators. One, with which we can judge or gauge ourselves. One, how tolerant are we of people who are not like us? All right. Is there justice in our social systems? Uh, is there disparity? Are people thought of the same? Are we treated the same under the law? Do we have laws which are fair? Are the laws implemented everywhere with equality? Or is there justice in the system? I think the most important thing is there justice in the system? And if you ask, I don't know. I don't think we are anywhere scoring anywhere even like close to even 50% of where we would like us to be.
There is a clash between what is modern and say what is traditional, and there's a
No,
clash.
I will tell you, I
Okay.
was raised in a fairly traditional society, very, very structured, traditionally structured society. And
Yeah.
and I think we within those traditions, we were taught the right values. I was taught the right values. As in, all people around me were taught the right values: to respect others who are not like you, to respect elders, to respect your women, to respect men. I mean, people from all sorts of society, and there were reasoning for. There were stories. We were not just given these set of instructions to be like that. Life was lived like that. That's how you pick up these traditions, because you live a tradition, and tradition does not necessarily have to be bad. Traditions can be extremely good because they have evolved over a period of time. But however, and we have no idea about these theories of social justice, theories of how we should and should not. There was no background to it. There was just stories.
So, I mean, there are a couple of points that I agree with Imran on, but and some that I think I hold a different opinion. I do agree that what do we even mean by modern? That maybe this onset of technology or this idea of having branded things is like opening up of the economy, and all of that is like, I know, bigger roads, more airports is seen as modernity or seen as development, but that's a very small infrastructural aspect of it in terms of us being uh better people, better communities, more inviting, more inclusive. Uh, that definitely just gone haywire, right? And also modern India in what context, right? Which is also, I think, similar to what Imran was asking. Are we speaking of a metropolitan, cosmopolitan India? Are we speaking of an urban India? Are we speaking of a rural India? Right? India has very many layers and facets to it altogether. Um, and um, and the thing around modernity is that there is, I think, a strong force that is pushing towards maybe more westernization. And then anytime that there is a conversation around, say, challenging skewed power structures or being critical of the problematic aspects of our culture or problematic aspects of our traditions that have been exclusionary, that have been limiting of people's potentials, that have ascribed certain roles, behaviors, appearances onto people. Anytime that there is a critique to that, there is any sort of pushback from the very people, of our societies. I think what is the pushback that we get is that these are Western modern ideas that do not hold place. in a space that has had such rich tradition and culture. So yeah, so what I'm going to come back to is that definitely tradition and culture is not necessarily opposing to modernity. It is not opposing to development, but it is also not something that works in a changing time. The young people of today's time um, should, and I think are a lot more questioning, because there is a lot more access to information. There is a lot more access, and an overwhelming amount of access to information, right? So that's where maybe we're always on high alert because of how much exposure there is in communities that are getting even more guarded, right? We all live in gated societies. We all, we're I mean, we're defunding most of the public amenities, so everything is privatized. So everything is a very curated experience. And then there is the world of the internet, where things are not as curated, and you do get bombarded by things. And so that dissonance is very understandable. I would say then, I want to continue to stress then on what I think Imran was also saying, that we need to really decide for ourselves what is a modern India. And is it, I mean, are we only talking of materialistic things, or are we also talking or ready to talk about being better people, being people who are, who can show up with care for, yeah, even for people we don't fully understand, we have maybe never met, who don't live like us, who don't look like us, but can
Yeah.
we step up and say that they're as human and as wanting of a fulfilling life of aspirations and freedoms as the rest of us. And it shouldn't just be, and freedoms and aspirations shouldn't just be a commodified sort of um, uh, experience.
We are mostly considered a modern state in the sense that at least, we are now independent, right? We are now, we have a democracy that works in some ways, right? We've got a certain amount of sovereignty, and someone attacks us, we whack them back, right? Why shouldn't say that? If someone attacks us, we can respond, right? So things like that. Now, how much, like what is the status of all the rights of our citizens? Yeah, I mean, we're a growing economy. We have some of those things that you were talking about earlier, Shubhangi, in terms of material wealth, um, and obviously it's that idealistic state that we want to create for what India means and whether or not we're caring towards each other, where the debate is, right? So in terms of like, are we really tolerant, and like, is our society actually quite divisive, or is there real justice? Now those are things that are up for debate, and obviously up for improvement, right? But what I'm still trying to get to the nub of is that, given that we're in such a flux, given that and also given the fact that you could be a citizen or a girl, in a remote town in India, say somewhere in the northeast, or you could be, slap in the middle of all national governance in Delhi, but you would perhaps equally feel disenfranchised for some reasons. And I was wondering if you could get to that, and talk about what is it that makes a girl feel unseen, unheard, unsafe,
Yeah.
all those things. So I'll come back to you now, Imran, and ask you, like, honestly, I mean, do we raise our girls to play it safe in respect?
I think we do. And I think we do that very consciously because we don't have a choice. Uh,
Mm.
we are living in a society which has lost its moral compass. I can be pretty harsh about it, and I don't mind taking you whatever you have to throw at me on this. Uh, we are a society without a moral compass, uh, and until unless we get one, we'll have to play it safe.
Yeah.
I'm saying this to you because this is the toughest call I have to make on a daily basis. Uh, I am raising my daughters to be independent, to know that they can do whatever they want to do. Yet at the same time, I don't want them to be victims of anything. Uh, they stand up in their schools talking about some issues which may be not related to gender, which can be related to politics, or sometimes even social structures within the society. And you see very soon how they are kind of pushed away by a certain group. Now you cannot, and these are all children. This is the most worrying aspect of it. These are all children. None of them have any great vested interest or understanding of the power that they hold, yet they all know the power they are having over others by virtue of being a part of a certain group. So safety is paramount. Safety is paramount. I don't want my daughters to be victim of anything. Yet at the same time, how can you be safe and not be a coward at the same time? Right? You have to stand up for yourself and for others. You have to say what is right. You have to feel safe and secure wherever you are. But the fact is, you are not safe and secure wherever you want to go, because we have proven ourselves over the past 75 odd years that we have been unable to protect people with whatever rights we have given them. The Constitution has bestowed them. And the biggest victims here have always been women. Sometimes when it works for the politicians, you make a huge hue and cry of any crime against a woman, and most of the times it is just not there. It's not even registered. I mean, most of the crimes against women are not even registered, and in the garb of tradition, most of them are just, most of the women accept it as their way of being. Now, whereas I wouldn't like my girls to stand up and accept anything from anybody, but I would like them to have the sense of when to sense danger and run away and find a safe space to vent out what they want to vent out. And this may seem very off feministic, but I'm fine with that, because I want my daughters to be safe and I want them to be safe, because if
Absolutely.
they have to make a lasting change, and safety doesn't mean only physical safety, Madhuri. Safety means to be in a mental state where they can think independently, they can think on their own, they can think radically if they want to. Right? Their thinking process should not be cut, because you never know, they can come up with solutions in the future, and that's the only way to be. How can to my mind, how can you be in any other way? So yes, these are tough
I totally
calls.
get that. I totally get that.
These are
Yeah.
absolutely tough calls.
Yeah.
And
Shubhangi, how about you?
I actually just want to add something to what Imran is
Yeah.
saying, that
What
I
is your
don't
reaction?
that it is I don't think that it is unfeministic. It's actually a core feminist principle that that you do no harm, right? You have, even if you cannot change status quo, just make sure that you haven't made it worse. And sometimes being strategic, picking your battles in that sense can be. I've done a lot of crisis intervention, so I'm also maybe speaking from that light. Um, uh, but uh, but yeah, I think I do agree with what you're saying, and I will maybe push it forward, saying that it is important to ask the questions, to be critical thinkers, and maybe we are slowly shrinking spaces for young people to actually be able to do that without feeling some great sense of impending doom upon them, right? Whether it is like, you get reprimanded in school, you don't get, because you have yeah like had like taken a stance around something that has happened in school. And it's, yeah, and like even this sort of uh, etching in stone of how hierarchies work, and they cannot be questioned, like powers cannot be questioned because there's so much at stake. It starts in the smallest ways, um, right? I mean, for us to even be making decisions, it's an evolving capacity. It is not that at 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 18 years there's a bell that will go off and I am now suddenly an adult and now I can vote and I can drive, and that I can now, my consent is going to be legally acceptable. This it, being decision making is an evolving capacity, so is thinking. And that has to start young. It has to start early. If we keep almost punishing young people for questioning, they are going to be uncritical, unthinking adults, and they are going to want to, instead of questioning oppressive powers or oppressive behavior or discriminatory behavior, they are going to join in, and that is what we also are seeing, right? That and I actually, I think maybe I'll pick up something from what Imran said earlier as well, that it takes a village. It really does. So even to raise your voice against something, it also takes a village. For us to even find any kind of confidence in the laws, it it takes an ecosystem. It cannot be, me against this huge system, the entire legal, the entire justice mechanism. It requires support people, it requires paralegals, it requires lawyers, it requires cops who know how to do their job, it requires judges who know how to do their job. Right? It takes, I mean, a system means many cogs in it. It cannot run by itself, which is again why I guess conversations like these are so critical. But over to you, Madhuri. I think you were nudging me in
No,
some
I was just going to say it probably
question.
starts even before that, doesn't it, Shubhangi? Because before 18, you're at home. And if you've got, say, a protective dad saying, don't go out at night, uh, he's probably, I mean, I mean, one kind of father is saying that because he's entirely unaware that traditions is about to change and that we're living in quote unquote modern India. But it might be out of a sense of protection, on the other hand, where you're just saying, look, it's dangerous. And, why don't we find a safe mode of transport for you to go to and to go in and with and safe people, etc., etc. So it's really the quality of conversations that you're having around women's safety and women's the space they take up in life, that starts at home, in schools, well before you get to the level of public institutions,
Oh,
right?
100%. 100%. I feel like uh, so many times, and this is not something new, right? I mean, this is something that has happened with my generation, with the generations before me, that in the name of protection, there is a lot of um, infantilization. There's a lot of like like, you really disenfranchise people, saying that, like where I mean, and then you turn into adults where you just like, oh, I cannot take a decision because I have never taken one. I cannot go out by myself because I have never gone. But of course, I mean, feeling safe, everyone wants to feel safe. I don't think even young people, even for the sake of an experience of a nightlife, want to like be unsafe. But how that gets played out, and very much picking up from what you're saying, Madhuri, that that it can be no because I said so, and you cannot question me, to saying, that these are my apprehensions, and this is why I'm saying no. And then say maybe do some problem solving around with it. And I know it's going to be such a terrible example. I was much older than 18, but yeah, I mean, I feel like my parents and I've been for a long time, in and out. But yeah, I mean, I feel like my parents and I would often have this conversation where they'd be like, okay, if you all, if you feel unsafe, if you get in trouble, call the cops before you call us, right? Because they're really far away, and it can sound almost like doomsday planning, right? That, oh my god, why are you asking your kid to go for the cops? But I think something that I think what it did for me is that it also um, sort of yeah, it made the cops less scary for me, because maybe my parents and I were not having conversations about cops are so scary and they're going to exploit you, but more like, they're supposed to be people who show up. And of course, I'm also talking about a very different context, right? I am talking about an urban space. But yeah, I mean, and this is just an example, right? But where you can maybe have these conversations where like, okay, but are you going to have a chaperone? Are there going to be adults with you? What are you going to be doing? It's really about creating the conversation instead of an instead of a controlling
Yeah.
authoritarian role.
I feel like all of us must have like so many stories. So maybe we can just take a 5 minute break from all this intellectualization and just talk about our own stories. So I don't mind going first. So like for example, I remember when I was younger, there was no actually there was no question of conversation really because um, I can remember getting into public transport in Delhi and in Bombay and literally being felt up everywhere in places I didn't even know existed, right? And so I took to wearing boots even in the height of summer so that I could kick and scream, right? So every time someone touched me, I would hit like there were no tomorrow. And then that fellow would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." And they wouldn't know where to go from there. Right? So basically, they would just think 100 times, hopefully, before touching the next girl. And that's what I used to do. But of course, as I grew older, I couldn't do it. Luckily for me, I transitioned to a place where I didn't have to take public transport. But I mean, like, I'm not strong enough to take on a man anymore. I mean, like, I'm in my 50s, right? But there are all these literally memories of how it is just so horribly unsafe, almost sickening to just step out of your own home and encounter people from different backgrounds. And it really used to feel like everyone was attacking us. I will say though, on the hopeful side, is that now when I talk to youngsters, especially fellows and all, um, you know, everyone knows the word consent, for example. I was like, oh, that's amazing,
So,
because
and
these
it's such an important word to know. It's so surprising that we get taken
people
aback.
actually know
Like,
it.
what? It's a conversation now.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I
it's
was like,
great that
wow.
it is a conversation. Yeah.
So somewhere it's dipped through the system, right? But I wonder, Imran, if you've got any stories, maybe of how you came up against these things and how you decided or problem solved to get through it. And perhaps your problem solving wasn't as
Mine is a very complex
cool
situation.
as mine.
I grew up in a
I'm
space
sure.
wherein it was unsafe, period, for
Yeah.
everybody.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
so these were not issues at that time. All right. But I have my daughter here, right, staring at me. Maybe she can tell you something.
I,
Uh, but uh, uh, but but I think the idea that you can feel safe only if you have your own transport, that's such stifling. You know, um,
correct.
both my daughters, they cannot take public transport. I am 100% sure. And I have grown up, and my sisters have grown up. We have always taken public transport, all of us. We have walked. My sisters used to walk about 7 kilometers to school every day, one way. And I shudder to think of leaving my daughter on her own to go to school. She doesn't even go in the school bus because it's too crowded. So I go and drop her and go and pick her up. I don't know whether I'm doing any service to her, or I'm doing actually a huge disservice to her, because how is she going to navigate through this world? And I have really no clue. I'm clueless. But my
But it's
instincts,
a very
maternal
difficult
instincts.
conversation to have.
Sorry.
No, no, it's a very difficult conversation to have. I said it's a very difficult conversation to have because
Absolutely.
um, you're putting your child at risk. But I mean, if you zoom out a little bit, the conversation would be around, it's better to educate everybody so that you
Yeah, but
get to a society or a stage of development where
that's
you can
that
take a bus and be safe,
exactly, Madhuri, that's what
right?
I meant when I
But
said
you
that
can't you
we
can't put
have lost
someone's
our
life
moral
on the
compass.
way.
So what do we do?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna risk my child to see whether to test whether the society has reached there or not, right? And it is not like we were absolutely as horrible in the past as we are today. We had a very strong sense of morality in this country, which for some reason has just disappeared, absolutely disappeared. I mean, you read whatever you read in the newspapers. I've read very big cases, but you go to any space, you talk to young girls anywhere, it is so dangerous. Forget about these big issues. As in, how is a young woman supposed to trust anybody when she goes through these experiences on the street? You know, my daughter, she is around 5 feet and 8 inches. She's 13 years old. And 3 years ago, while right in front of me, there was a group of boys who were catcalling her. And I don't know what to do as a parent. I mean, I can get up and bash them up, but is that the solution? Would that give my daughter the idea of bravado? This is how men are supposed to be, who go out and bash others.
Exactly.
I mean, these are the dilemmas. What is the standard that I'm setting up for my children? What is it they should expect from society,
Yeah.
from people at large? I mean, post that we had a conversation about it. And I sometimes realize that is all we do. That's all I can do. I can only have conversations. I can only educate. I can be with her till I can, and then she will be on her own. Both my children will be on their own. I mean, I feel more threatened today than I felt when I was growing up in Srinagar, because that threat was very different threat. This threat is so
That is a threat to yourself, and this is a threat to someone.
So I have a
that
couple of
threat is
things
very
to add
random.
to
No,
this.
that threat was very random.
It's more.
That was not specific. It was not that I did not like myself. I would certainly want to live for long, but that is so randomized. That threat was so randomized. You just had to be very unlucky to be there. But here, you can be targeted just
Yeah.
because you look good, you look tall, you look older than your age.
So, I mean, I have a bunch of things to add to this because I have a lot of work in this space. But yeah, the statistics show that the situation hasn't changed very much. Like, it wasn't better earlier and worse now. The statistics of 1 in 3 women has been true for decades. Right, but I mean, it's more. This specifically is more towards domestic violence, I suppose. But also,
Okay,
if
one in
you
three
look
women in India will face domestic violence.
globally,
Global.
it's true for India, but also globally. So it's not even India specific. This is the situation across the globe. And of course, because we know our context best, it seems more jarring. We do hear a lot of these travel advisories that now different countries are giving out about India, about the kind of gender-based violence and sexual violence that is there. So it also brings it into a lot of public light, but it really is the situation quite across the board. I think what has changed now is that we have a lot more language, we have a lot more avenue, we have a lot more validation of, say, if I come back from having taken the bus and I say, that this guy was harassing me on the bus, there's a lot more validation of saying that, oh yeah, this was probably happening to you, and it's really bad that it was happening to you. Instead of, I mean, of course, and there's a huge space where that fear still exists, that if I talk about this, my mobility is going to get restricted. And this is an age-old story. And Again, if we look at Indian statistics, and I might be a couple of points above or below, but about only 23% of women who face gender-based violence, this is domestic violence or sexual violence, actually speak to anyone about what they're facing. And this is a spec, and I'm not speaking about the most aggravated form of sexual violence. I'm speaking also about harassment that happens on the street, including what we also call catcalling, geese teasing. Right? Only about 23% of people who actually face such violence speak to anyone about it. And out of this, those who speak, maybe about 2% go to lawyers or the police for an intervention. So even for those who are speaking up and like asking for support, they're also asking for support from within the community, right? It is from their family, from the elders in the community, the whoever would be, say, like a moral head would be seen as a moral head, friends, and so on. So, and these statistics haven't particularly moved in decades. I'm speaking from a population survey of what is called
At the laws have
the
changed, right?
Yeah. So what this has actually
Sorry?
done is that it has given us, so having access to this kind of data, having access to this kind of information, hearing more and more about people's experiences, what it has allowed is it has allowed us to put this articulation into some kind of laws, into some kind of mechanism that people can seek support from. But the thing is that there is still a lot of normalization of certain things, that that this isn't big enough for
Yeah.
me to go and report to an authority, speak to someone outside of even my family or even within my family about, right. And also there's a huge sort of backlash with the laws coming in saying that, oh, women are getting so many privileges of, like now they can just randomly falsely accuse people. And there's a whole different sort of misogynistic stand around this, as if women or young people, as if it's easy to go to any authority. Just let's begin with that, like including our own parents, and saying that, oh, that someone is bullying me in school. It's not as easy as we imagine it to be. I feel like a lot of this harassment would otherwise be getting called out, and when it did start getting called
Yeah.
out, we did get anti-ragging policies, right? And then there were
Yeah.
spaces. But it's also just like going back to what Imran was saying, that then what do you do? Because obviously you don't. But see, the fact of the matter is that women on a daily basis, irrespective of the age or any other spectrum that they exist on, are making a daily negotiation of, facing a certain kind of very normalized sexism, very normalized misogyny. And if we don't start equipping ourselves with how do you navigate this space. And I'm not saying that this means that now young people should be walking 7 kilometers to school. Definitely not. But can we take smaller steps where exercising agency is something that we can put into practice, so that, Imran, and it's a very legitimate worry. I mean, a lot of the crisis intervention that I've done for 10 years, I feel like this is what parents, even with adult married women who have been in like bad marriages or like bad situations at work, are coming in seeking help. And this fear persists, right? That how is she going to do it by herself? But the thing is that we are living our lives by ourselves. We can have the support.
Yeah.
But until and unless we can start prepping ourselves to exercise agency, whether it is to acknowledge that someone is harassing them on the street, whether it is to make the calculated call that, okay, right now I'm walking by myself and this is not the time for me to be doing this, but I will go back and talk to my friend about it, or I'll talk to my father about it, or of how it made me uncomfortable, and then think about what is going to make me not fearful of the streets, not fearful of walking by myself, but how can I even, sort of turn that around in any way? And it doesn't have to be something heroic, right? It doesn't have to, we don't have to necessarily be martyrs for these kind of things to change. But I think exercising agency in small ways in this evolving time is something that we definitely have to put in place, because a very protective approach, a very protectionist approach to it is also robbing us of, and robbing young people of
Of that whole business of becoming, right?
Surviving.
Of
No,
ourselves.
no.
Yeah.
correct.
Of,
More than
of,
surviving. I mean,
of actually surviving to start with. No, I
Yeah.
completely agree with that. I mean, you have to, until unless you first help a child to stand up and then walk, and then the child has to walk on their own, and
Yeah.
you're you're not going to be there with for them. And even if you
Correct.
survive to be with them forever, you'll never have the strength. You'll never understand issues. So of course, uh, I I I would imagine it's very important to first bring children, have that confidence in them about who they are, and also disassociate shame with whatever you're experiencing. I think that is very, very important.
Very.
That's that's what me and Anita, we are completely focused on: disassociation of shame.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
it is not shameful to be touched. So
Without
have
consent.
that
Yeah.
understanding of how this world is, and that's how you can
Yeah.
navigate it. And then, of course, have the bodily, physical, mental strength to say no or
Mhm.
to retaliate. All right. And my daughter was being bullied in school, and I had to tell her, you can be violent. I don't really care. Please go ahead and be violent. It's fine. They will call me father. I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I will speak with your principal.
Hey,
It's
self-defense is an exception. So
it is not that I want my children to grow up violent children.
You
So
have
that
to
is,
you have to use your head. I mean your brain.
I
So in fact, there were no circumstances under which violence was acceptable.
no, I
So
think,
I guess they're just different approaches. I mean, I see where you're coming from,
I mean,
but
it's very
anyway, I
interesting,
mean, there's no.
violence
and we've had a lot of
is
conversations
a
around violence.
legitimized is violence is also a legitimized way of actually standing up when all avenues go away.
Politics of politeness is actually it does come from a lot of narrative of also oppressors, because you
Yes,
can be like, but like respond in civil ways. So it's a when you see it from people who are getting oppressed, it's yeah, like I think I think the definition of violence
Like
really changes,
the whole
and then it really becomes
conversation.
assertion. It really becomes like self-defense. So it's a yeah, but yeah, we don't have to get into this.
no,
No, no, I mean
there,
I mean back and look at it, it's like the difference between Nelson Mandela and Gandhi ji, right? Gandhi ji chose non-violence as a strategy, and Nelson Mandela took to arms. And they were both equally righteous in what they were fighting for, which was the freedom of their people. And they were both equally aghast and ashamed about the oppressions that their peoples went through, right? But Mandela chose to take up arms, and Gandhi never did. So I think they're both just strategies, and it depends
who
on
your
what you
opponent
pick at
is,
the end.
what are the times. Coming back to the strategies, as in, we never ask our boys to be violent or not to be violent, to go into street fights or not go into street fights. They just do. They just do. If they
But
feel
I was going to
threatened, they
ask
do.
you because
But
this is
but
the
girls
key to
don't
that.
tend to.
Yeah.
Girls don't tend to, and I think that's why they need to be told that they can. I'm not saying that people have to be violent at all. Please don't misunderstand me. But there's an ecosystem which exists, wherein it's okay for boys to defend themselves in a certain way, and for the
Right.
girls have to be polite. I don't agree with that. Women in general need to assert themselves much better.
Yeah.
They need to first start believing that they are equal, they are capable of doing anything that they can. And when they do that, only then can they actually stand up for their rights. All right. And only then we will see a society which is largely safer than the one that we are living in.
Yeah. But I do want to say that, I want to talk about the boys now and what we tend to teach boys or allow boys to do. But if you're living in a state or a country where it should offer everyone equal protections, hopefully, you have the choice of going to the cops, as you said, Shubhangi, or going to some sort of third mediator before you take to violence, right? You don't just take to violence. But anyway, so let's go and now talk about boys who often have a different upbringing and not and by the same very often by the same set of parents who are bringing up girls, right? So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. Shubhangi, do you have some light to throw on, this whole idea of power and how it just sort of automatically seems to go to the male gender?
Gender roles in their very construction have actually placed the masculine as someone who is going to receive a lot of unsaid labor around their existence, and which you is going to come from more feminine roles. And now when there are a lot more young women who are breaking away from that, or at least like whatever that are trying to take a lot more charge and control of their lives. uh there is this huge lacuna with these young men who are just like, wait a second, but but this is not all right. Like, either you be one of those like multi-armed goddesses and you're doing everything, but if you're unable to, then there definitely is this pushback. And like I said, I only work on with women and queer folk when it comes to questions of justice. That does not mean that I don't think that justice is something that should be across the board. But I am of the strong opinion that it should be men who should be speaking to young men about these issues, about saying that that this is not just your playing field. If you're speaking about equality, it also means, equality is not just, say, like coming up, bringing someone up to power. Unfortunately, social structures are like this, right? So if someone's coming up to power and you don't get to the side, there is going to be friction, right? There is going to be that constant push up and push down. So to move to the side and let everyone use the playing field, because there is enough play to go around. Yeah. But you don't have to give up. You just have to not come in the way. I don't think that there is a lot of giving up that there really would be, unless we want to say out loud that doing the chores at home is giving up on something, right? No, and I'm just
But I mean, if you
trying
look,
to add an illustration.
if you look at the way resources are allocated, say, I don't know, in offices or in families, etc., and who has access to what resources. I mean, if you are traditionally in the camp that is being given all the resources, say because you're male, the pie is limited. You do have to give up. You have to share that space. So it's more than moving aside. I mean, in the sense that in order for someone else to be at the same level as you have to do more than move aside. You have to give up.
No, but Madhuri, that's the very point. That's my very point, right? That those resources, and of course, this is a very, very important point that you raise, right? That, and like very like material resources, right? Like there is one smartphone in the household, whatever, right? Something like that. But the fact of the matter always was that it was always a shared resource. It was never one person's resource. It was just always, and has traditionally been monopolized, and that monopoly always was unfair, right? And to constantly say that, no, actually you don't need mobility because your role is in the kitchen, and my role is outside. But that's unto everyone. Mobility is something that everyone requires, and everyone should have. What they do with that mobility is up to them. But to then force someone to not have mobility because it's good, because then you will have to share what was already supposed to be shared commons. So I mean, so then in that case, then giving up would be to give up the unfairly hoarded resources, and it's important to do that. And we can then otherwise equality and justice are going to be intellectual abstractions, and they're never going to be lived realities. And to be very honest, there is enough rights to go around, and then more material resources. If we can just if we can just figure out how to really respect very basic, very fundamental rights, which is human dignity, being able to make decisions for your own body, for your own life, be able to think and share your thoughts with people. These are very, very basic things.
Absolutely.
I think we need to recognize something very early on, that we are not talking about people, we are not talking about individuals here. All right, this power, this power which is transferred from millennia. So it is this power which has to be dislodged, and it is going to be tough. Women will have to battle it out. There is no other way that this power is.
And
It's
they
not about
have
you
been
fighting
Imran
me.
for decades.
Yeah, for millennia. I'm not talking about decades. I'm talking about millennia. So the power
Mm,
has been there. It's not about you beating me, pushing me aside, and me giving you space. That's
100%.
easy. That's very easy. You're not fighting against individuals. You're fighting against this power structure, which has to
I
shift.
completely agree.
Which
And
has to shift.
I feel
And
like
if I
maybe
may
what I
complete,
was saying, yeah,
yeah, if I may complete, and the key to this shift of power, in my way of thinking, is actually the women again, because all children are raised by women, and that's where the power lies. So you need
why?
really strong, independent women to raise very strong, independent boys and very strong, independent girls. So the boys, when they are strong and independent, then they don't have to depend on the power of the gender when they are comfortable in their own skins, because the boys are never comfortable in who they are. They are always comfortable in the role that is assigned to them. If you speak with a boy as an individual, that person is very different from the role that boy is actually holding.
Imran, what you're talking about is patriarchy and
I'm I,
gender, quite literally.
I'm talking about more than patriarchy. It's also the way the women are, the roles that have been traditionally given to women, how they are not really holding them, or not really using them. You see how
But hang on, you
all
can't,
the
you
kingdoms
can't
have
blame
always.
women for
But that's the very point, Imran. That that
yeah.
that raising children takes a village, and it's not a village of women.
I'm saying that, of course, I agree with that. That's why we are having this discussion. The point
Even
is
back
that if you
then,
have to, if you have to shift the status quo, all right, you will certainly need women with power, and women who as mothers are powerful enough to challenge this thing. I mean, no man is going to leave his position, not man as a person, but the power that man leaves. It is an upfront battle. No person is going
okay,
to give up their position in the society. If, for example,
I hear what you're saying.
the laws say that the property has to be divided equally amongst all the children, and yet, even in the most progressive families I know in Delhi,
Yeah,
women don't get a share of the property. And these are women who are CEOs of companies.
yeah,
These are
yeah. I agree.
these
I
are not
agree.
illiterate women. In fact, I see far more illiterate women fighting for their rights, because the property is so little and they want to have something to their name.
I
And
also see
and you have
illiterate men or
you have
rural men give
they
equal right
have
and
to,
property.
because these
Yeah,
are the
because
women who
it's not
approach the
theirs.
court. They approach the
Yeah,
courts, and rural men
courts.
have to give. But these very rich, educated women, they don't ask. The men don't give. So there has to be this shift. If the women do not take control of themselves, their own
I
right,
Imran,
nobody's going
what
to hand them these things back.
I really want to interject here, because I don't think I disagree. I don't think we're saying different things, right? Before this, when I was talking, I was also not saying that it is a fight between man and woman. It never was, and it never should be. Right? Because really is about it's really about dismantling patriarchy, and what that is a system, what you are saying, this millennia old system that has become so entrenched, and it hurts people of all identities in just being able to be themselves and reach their potential. um, and it really brings me to this point, and why I'm interjecting maybe speaks to something that you were saying earlier as well, that it is about power, right? And it is about power, and it needn't always be or justified. I think it is doing disservice to what we want from a society by saying that only those who are getting oppressed, which in this very situation would be, say, women or queer people, that they have to keep fighting and keep asking, because those who have power are never going to budge.
No, they will
Why
budge.
not?
They have
Right?
budged quite a lot.
Exactly.
They have budged quite a lot.
And that is what I
It's
want
an
to,
ever
that's what I want
evolving
to get at.
society.
That these notions of equality, of, yes, of evolving societies, of justice, men are as capable of having these sensibilities, and these are the very men who need to speak to younger men and say that, say that it doesn't take away from your identity as a
No,
person,
no,
from your identity as a man, if
Shubhangi,
you would
Shubhangi,
share.
the men who are secure in who they are, they're already doing that. It's about dislodging the men who want to hold on to the power. I wish I,
Why shouldn't men do
I
that?
wish we
Men
could
should do
change their
that.
mind without having to really fight them, enforce the laws. See, why do we have? You see, the patriarchy is so dominant in our society. Yet we have enacted laws which should provide equal status to women and men. Right, everywhere we have these laws. So these have been passed by our parliament, and when we say it has been passed by our parliament, that means they have been endorsed by the society, the entire society. Yet they are not implemented, which says something very disturbing. We say something and we do something else altogether in real life.
I need to close because it's becoming a very long conversation, but I'm loving it, and I'll tell you why. The reason I'm loving it is because there is so much more to explore on this. There is so much more to be said on either side, and I mean, not even to say that we are on different sides. I mean, there is so much to be discussed, discerned, pulled apart, put back together, and I think that our society is most certainly in that flux. But when you say, for example, that there are laws, and some of them are quite recent, yeah, they're only 15, 20 years old, some are even more recent than that. I mean, Shubhangi is going to back me up. Our laws are coming into place quite a bit later than our country was born, right? I mean, these things change. But what I love to see, and when I see modern India or whatever, is when I love to see things that we're discussing here that tend to be in the gender space or whatever now are percolating. So if you look at, for example, if you look at an urban planner, they are already thinking about women's safety, and they're saying, let's have brightly lit streets so that there are no dark corners in which women can be molested. For example, let's run buses that are only for women. Let's whatever. I'm just making up example, but I'm just saying to you that that is a percolation of ideas. So it's not us banging about us as the more enlightened, intellectual, whatever, who've come to that realization ourselves. Not us banging on about those things by ourselves. It is percolating, and there's a word for it even which I learned quite recently called mores. It goes into your norms, your conventions, such that, for example, an architect today, for example, cannot pass a building plan, if it's not accessible to people who are physically disabled. Just saying, so it is percolating, it is getting there. And I mean, I don't think that everyone knows about it, perhaps, or um, it's not being done to perfection, and obviously we've got a long way to go. But my sense is that it can be much more hopeful than this, and we all have a role. And Shubhangi, perhaps you would like to have the last word around, how are young people now changing things around them, and like, how do, like, how, like, are they speaking up? Is there a way to change the discourse in a way that it actually, there's a permanence to it?
Um, I feel like generation after generation talking about this is a certain sort of permanence to it. It is I do see a lot of young people, um, yeah, coming into uh, the world, or even their own their own social context, uh, with a lot more questions, and not just a lot more criticality to an extent, and not just saying, okay, yes, this is what has been done and this is what I'm going to do as well. Um, there is some sort of uh, a challenge to why is it done this way, and why do I need to do it the exact same way, you know, and that's very important, and we need to actually continue to encourage young people, and not in patronizing ways or in tokenistic ways that okay, we need to have one young person speak on this issue, but in really enabling ways, uh, to also say challenge where the things that we haven't moved uh, in our thoughts or in our articulation with time. We really need to be encouraging the questioning, and that's something that I stand by. I feel like as a 15-year-old, I did get access to spaces that gave me a lot of articulation, gave me a lot of words um, to question, and not necessarily outrightly, but question about myself. Be try and find more about what were these thoughts that I was having. Be able to pose those questions with my friends. Be able to pose it with with yeah with friends, with family, um, and then so on and so forth. And I really I really do credit that in having played such a huge role in me, in me being able to also move a little with the time, while having my convictions, while having my a strong ethical core, I suppose. And it only keeps evolving. So yeah, I feel like to for us to have more conversation around just basic rights, around what an enabling world really looks like for young people, for young girls across the spectrum, and encourage that questioning, and uh, use that as the space to innovate, the space to be creative in a changing time.
Yeah, how nicely said. Thank you. Imran, any closing words, my dear? What is it that keeps you motivated in this sea
Well,
of
I
clouds?
think my girls keep me motivated. I think that's what I'm going to say. Um,
Yeah.
I think,
Their curiosity, imagination, all
yeah,
those things.
because no, because they're very beautiful people, human beings, and they have an amazingly beautiful soul. I'm sure all children are like that, and I wish that we could live in a utopian world, but we are not. But my endeavor, I don't work on in this field as much, but my endeavor is specifically to raise confident young girls who can stand for themselves. And my wish is for every person, every couple to have girls, at least two girls before they have a boy, so that they learn how to raise their son, and the girls can help raise their sons, because I was raised by my mother and my two elder sisters, uh, and I grew up to be a very sensitive person, and they inculcated all I needed to know in the world. They inculcated in me the respect towards everybody in this world. And I think we just need very strong women, and we need to raise strong women. Men will be men, that's just like they say, because they have power. Nobody wants to leave power. They need to be pushed, they need to be dethroned. So that push will have to come from everybody, all right thinking men and all right thinking women. So yeah, we all need to work hard on that. We need to create conversations around these issues in schools, in colleges, and we need to include mostly men into these conversations, and we need to listen to what they have to say, because men generally grow up to be very lonely. They can only act as a herd. So we need to have men taken out of these herds and make them to feel who they really are, which they generally are not, which they are not aware of. So they are a part of a herd. They don't think for themselves as much as we would like them to. They just behave like a herd. So if we can sensitize them towards just this aspect of their own individuality vis-a-vis the role that they are fulfilling, we could achieve quite a bit in changing their attitudes towards the issues around them, and not feel that they are born with the right to do what they want to do.
Well, thank you all for your thoughts. And I'm thinking, sitting here, that perhaps it's really not enough to have a conversation about bringing up girls in modern India. And perhaps we should do the corollary some other time and talk about boys. Um,
Yeah,
so,
that would be
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, that would be interesting. And
Yeah, for sure.
I also feel that I don't know that we've included enough of a conversation on the spectrum. So that would be a third one. You know, the whole spectrum, or the gender spectrum, in this case. So for all you know, this is a series, Shubhangi, and so we shall rope you into more of these conversations as we go.
Be
Yeah.
very excited. Yes.
Thank you, Shubhangi, thank you, Imran, thank you,
Thank you.
Paloma. It's been a
Thank you,
really
Yes.
long
Madhuri.
one. Thank you for being here and giving us all of your time. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Thank